Hello, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. Welcome to Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism, co-hosted with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Aidan. It's good to be with you.
Great. Same to you. So, Laith, let's talk about the thing that, well, everyone's going to discuss, this ceasefire. So between the Zionist entity and the Palestinian resistance. So first of all, the ceasefire. Before we talk about if we think it would last or not, let's get down to the technical parts of it. Before I start, obviously Trump's basically claiming that he was behind it or whatever. That I'm not sure if I personally think that terribly matters, other than yes, it showcases, the Democrats, they didn't even pretend to give a damn. They want to fully fund this unconditionally. I guess if you want to talk about what you think the Republicans' motivations are here, you're welcome to do that. I would suspect it's tied to normalization for Israel with the Western proxies. Am I on the right track there?
Well, I don't think the Western proxies will be doing any normalization anytime soon. Honestly, the broadcasted Holocaust in Gaza has ended the prospects of normal relations with the Zionist colony on the whole planet. I mean, most of humanity does not want to do business and or be associated with them. So I doubt that the vessels in the Gulf that, like Saudi Kingdom, that were planning maybe to have normalization prior to October 7th, 2023, will suddenly do that. I don't think so. I think the whole strategy of Trump trying to end the war in the region here is because of the collapse of American economy and the collapse of American might, military might in general on a global scale. And we could see how Trump's pronouncements about taking over Canada, Greenland, and Panama play into that exactly. This plan of the United States needs to save its bases, save whatever is around it, strengthen itself to be able to compete again with China and economically and with Russia militarily. As long as the US is in a never-ending war in the region, it cannot do that. So that's what I think it's more related to, the reason that Trump is rushing now this end of this war.
So let's talk about the ceasefire. There's supposed to be, first of all, the Palestinian resistance actually does want this from the public statements to be a permanent ceasefire. We obviously know that Israel, the Zionist entity, doesn't want that. But on the technical side, what are the three steps of this ceasefire agreement that's supposed to go through? But we'll get to that after.
Yeah, so there's supposed to be a withdrawal of Israeli military from the Gaza Strip, specifically from the Rafah border crossing and the whole Philadelphia axis, as well as the Netzarim border crossing in the north. And we already are seeing the withdrawals begin. So the Netzarim axis in the middle of Gaza now is being, the Israeli military is withdrawing from it. Um, look, the ceasefire is supposed to come in effect on the 19th, the eve of the inauguration of the new emperor. So from now till then, obviously, Israel is going to try to massacre as many people as it can. And it demonstrated that last night, and it's already demonstrating this today. The next step is the beginning of exchange of prisoners of war, and it is one Israeli male soldier to 100 Palestinian males that are in Israeli prisons, and one, sorry, it's flipped over, one for 50 and for one Israeli female soldier to 100 Palestinian women that are in jail. So this is the overall kind of numbers that we're getting. And once that is done, there will be a entry of aid to the Gaza Strip, and then finally the last stage in the 45 days ceasefire is entry of reconstruction materials and beginning of lifting of the rubble and what have you. So it's 45 days. You don't know what's going to happen in those 45 days. Uh, there was a statement today by Abu Ubaidah, the spokesperson for the armed wing of Hamas, and he said that the Israelis were attacking today a location that one of the Israeli prisoners are held, and they don't know if he's dead already. And this is a warning to the Israelis that continuing bombardment of Gaza right now or intensifying the bombardment right now could mean less Israeli prisoners of war released because there will be more of them
Let's talk
dead.
about the Philadelphia corridor. Now, this is where I've seen online that there's been talk that Israel, the Zionist entity, is already refusing to leave the Philadelphia corridor and is trying to claim that the Palestinian resistance is not interested in following through on the deal, that they're supposedly trying to claim terms. So what's going on here, Laith?
Well, it's clearly the Israelis are somehow trying to play still more media propaganda, and I think it's Netanyahu specifically is trying to win some points with Smotrich and Ben Gvir. But the Palestinian negotiators came out today saying that they have not been putting any new conditions on this ceasefire, and in fact, it's the Israelis that are trying to find excuses to delay and or what do you call it, frustrate the ceasefire efforts. Now, I don't know how long the Israelis can play this game because clearly Trump does not want to enter office with this war continuing on his record. And so I don't think there's much maneuverability for Netanyahu. And if he continues, we know the Yemeni resistance today, the Yemeni government of Sana'a announced that they are watching very closely and they will be retaliating against the Israelis as we speak. By the way, today the Yemen also sent hypersonic missiles and drones on the Zionist colony. So they will continue until the Israelis stop. As long as the Israelis are bombarding Gaza, Yemen will continue attacking the Zionist colony and shipping going to it. So I think there's too many variables now, and the feelings in the world right now. It's all everybody wants this ceasefire, and if it doesn't work, the Israelis are going to pay for it.
Well, speaking of paying for it, I mean, I think, the Lebanese people have paid quite heavily for the Zionist aggression. So I'm wondering perhaps an idea of what Hezbollah, their calculations might be with this ceasefire now. And Ansarallah, of course, in Yemen, as well paid a price, a different price, but an extraordinary one over, well, even outside of Palestine directly.
Yeah, obviously, the quote unquote ceasefire in Lebanon is going to end the 60 days period on the 27th. So 7 days after Trump comes into power. We will see by that point if the Israelis are completely withdrawn from the south or not. The Lebanese people and the resistance in Lebanon paid the heaviest price outside Gaza for their support of the Palestinian people and their liberation. And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said that their resistance support is to make sure that the Palestinian resistance is not defeated. And as we see today, the Palestinian resistance is not defeated. And therefore, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah and the people of Lebanon delivered on the requirements that they put on themselves in terms of the kind of solidarity that they were providing. And they will be forever remembered as the nation that gave the most in Palestine's need of hour of need, sorry. And in terms of Yemen, Yemen has been suffering also, but it yet, has not, lost the leadership and or huge amount of martyrs as happened in Lebanon. But Yemen is expecting that the Israelis will turn their attentions to it once the ceasefire happens in Gaza. But obviously, if there's a ceasefire in Gaza, Yemen is not going to be firing on the Zionist colony, but except if the Zionist colony attacks them, which would be a stupid thing for Netanyahu to do after the ceasefire comes into effect in Gaza.
The West Bank, like we should be talking about this because it obviously wouldn't be touched by a ceasefire agreement. Do you think that Trump would go ahead and try to recognize an Israeli all-out annexation of the West Bank, say as a tool to placate the Zionists? Do you think that's a possibility?
It is a possibility. Of course, there is some sanctions that Biden put on some settler groups and individuals in the West Bank that probably, Trump promised to lift those sanctions if the ceasefire comes. We don't know what guarantees and or goodies, gifts Trump offered Netanyahu. We will know, I guess, as soon as he comes into power. But looking at the historical positions of Trump from his first presidency, he acknowledged Jerusalem, occupied Jerusalem as the capital of the Zionist colony, and he recognized the occupied Golan Heights, Syria's occupied Golan Heights as part of the colony. So there's not much left, that he can offer. And obviously, the small churches and even Geweers that reside in the West Bank, their priority is to gobble up the West Bank and its water resources and to strangle the Palestinians there and or expel them and kill them. And yesterday there was an attack by an air jet on Jenin refugee camp, and there was 5 martyrs and many injured. This is, you know, the new head of Hamas was in his speech yesterday declaring the ceasefire. He spoke about Jenin, and clearly Jenin is a priority for the Palestinian resistance. We may see that if the ceasefire comes into effect and there's more attacks by the PA and more attacks by the Israelis inside the West Bank, that Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the other Palestinian resistance groups will also intensify their battle on the ground in the West Bank. And we don't know if that's going to lead to another situation where we have outright genocide, just as happened in Gaza.
Right, so let's now I think about the ICC and so forth. Do you think there's going to be any attempt to shutter this kind of prosecution effort, shove it to the side now, or do you think that prosecution is going to last? And because I mean, we've already seen multiple, European Western countries confirm that they won't really apply this warrant, right? That's out there against Netanyahu. How do you think the ICC process is going to be impacted by the ceasefire if it actually goes through?
Out of all the international legal processes that started since the genocide in Gaza. I think the ICC process was the weakest because of how captured the ICC is in comparison even to the ICJ. And we saw the American Congress last week adopt a resolution sanctioning and threatening the lives of those members of the ICC that um, uh, prosecute Israeli officials, war criminals. The other thing that we should think about is the ICJ with the appointment of Fayyad as prime minister, who was the head of prime minister of Lebanon, who was the head of the ICJ, the chief judge, and him having to resign from his position. Now, the new chief judge in the ICJ is the Ugandan judge that was the only judge that voted in support of the Zionist colony during the proceedings on the genocide accusations that happened last year. So, even the ICJ process could be affected right now because the chief judge is the one that sets the dates, sets the procedures, and even though that it's one vote ultimately, but she can derail the whole process if she wants to. And given that she's, clearly in the pay of the Zionists and the Americans, she will probably do her best to undermine the process that was already in effect.
Really? So now looking a little bit more towards the Canadian situation, the when we talked last time, I had floated the potential of a liberal leadership candidate attempting to use the Palestine issue front for their benefit. Now there's a liberal MP, I believe for Nepean, Chandra Arya. And he's the only one I've seen out of the liberal candidates really emphasizing it's still the Zionist two-state solution. But he's the only one, again, this is what I was talking about. I was floating the idea that Salma Zahid might be the one to try to do that, but she's not running. So Chandra Arya is the one. Now, quite hilariously, he also has tried to say that not knowing French and wanting to run for a country where English and French are spoken doesn't matter. So it doesn't really seem like he could pull off a miracle and really compete, but it doesn't seem like he would. But this dynamic is what's interesting here because like at the end of the day, I also remember we talked last time and you were pretty clear they're not going to cede on this at all. But simultaneously, have you seen anything from Mark Carney really on the front of Palestine? Because I remember when Eve Engler, he actually confronted Carney a number of months ago, or perhaps it was a year ago or so, about the Zionist genocide. And Carney didn't really pick any words. He didn't go full Jeremy Levy. He just didn't say much of anything. So what are your impressions? Do you think Carney would be any different on the front of Palestine? Or do you think he's going to perhaps just be a more articulate, just supporter of genocide?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I am of the opinion, and I think many people already know this position that I have, that there is no such thing as democracy. It's all managed theatrics, and
You mean like
I don't.
democracy? Do you mean democracy in the Western countries, you mean?
Yes, yes. There's no such thing as democracy in the West, and to be truthful, it's not. It doesn't exist anywhere. And there's a lot of managed theatrics. Elites in every country play them in different ways. And this is not to say that uh, for me, the only way I can judge a state is that does it represent the will and the aspirations of its people? And so, clearly there is no politician or elected party in Canada that actually represents the will of the people and their aspirations. They all work for their corporations and the lobbies and the emperor in Washington, D.C., that gives him orders. I don't have any illusion that we can achieve any change through electoral politics in Canada. You can't uh, change parties that are bought and sold. Remember that you need to have $300,000, by the way, to
350,000.
run for, sorry,
I think it was 350,000.
350,000 to run, to be eligible to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party, which means that somebody has to give you that money or you got to be rich. And therefore, it doesn't really represent the possibilities of people and what people want in the country. And the other parties are not better. And if there was hope at one point that a small party like the Greens could be taken over by people that have true uh, aspirations that comply with what people want in the country. But we saw what happened with that. So you need to start up a new party from scratch. And that doesn't work if you don't have also a mass media, uh, arm behind you. And clearly, there's no mass media in Canada that can uplift a party into a national stage that is anti-imperialist or anti-colonialist or anti-Zionist. So the question we put forward to our brothers and sisters in Canada is that if it's clear that there's no way you can achieve change through these electoral politics systems, what else can you do? And revolutionary fever from the 60s and 70s and should be thought as an option. And the country, Canada, at any moment will fall under American occupation. And we can see that none of the parties that are in the parliament are going to do anything. So Canadians need to think about their revolutionary aspirations to make sure that the country doesn't fall into American direct occupation and to kick out all these collaborationist elite that have already sold much of Canada to the United States.
All right, Leith. Now, the other part is in general for the Canadian government. We have seen the celebrations in terms of the idea of their beloved Zionist two-state solution still running through. So I don't think we even really need you to run through. It is the Zionist two-state solution. Fundamentally, there should be no Zionist state under any circumstances. It is an illegitimate occupation. And before people come and say, oh, the USSR supported it, yeah, the USSR made a mistake. It made a mistake. Socialist nations can make mistakes. And
Yeah, I
so,
mean, people probably don't know also the backstory about why the Soviet Union voted uh, to accept Israel. And the backstory is actually very sad. The backstory is that, you know, there was a representative for Jewish European people in the commissariat, and those were the Bund, the Jewish communists that were fighting on the front lines and behind the enemy lines that sabotaged the whole Nazi supply route through Ukraine, and they suffered hugely. Most of them were martyred, our Jewish brothers and sisters, that were true communists and anti-Zionists were martyred in the fight against Nazism. And their sacrifices helped the Soviet military and the Soviet peoples get ready for the attempted invasions of Moscow and what have you. So when the time came to for the Soviet Commissariat to vote on this issue, they tried to find even one of the Bund leaders, and they couldn't. And so they had to fall to the opinions of the Israeli Communist Party. And at that time, the Israeli Communist Party called itself the Communist Party of Palestine. But it was all Zionist colonists that were in this party, and they refused to allow Palestinians in the party. So once the commissariat, took the opinion of the quote unquote Communist Party of Palestine, and it was to accept the creation of the Zionist colony, they took it as what they should do because that's the voice in their mind, which they didn't know at that point, of the people on the ground in Palestine.
Well, that's actually news to me. So thank you, Laith, for that insight. I am going to take a bit of an unusual step. We're going to go back into the international scene because I think the situation in Lebanon deserves a little bit more attention. So let's talk about especially Joseph Aoun, the new president of Lebanon. And can you talk about how he contrasts with the past president? Because I was looking into it a little bit, and there are complaints of the last president that he was too, quote unquote, tolerant of Hezbollah. So there's really two or three things here. First of all, last president, what was he doing? Second of all, Ayoun, in terms of himself on a certain level, who's backing him. But third of all, how does he actually get into power? Because the Hezbollah kind of coalition, which again is really only a thing because of the sectarian imposed politics. I think Laith, you and I would agree, Hezbollah would be a major party if it weren't for those imposed situations. So sorry, three questions. I'll let you go one by one on them.
Okay, so the former president that and his term ended 2.5 years ago, uh, Michel Aoun, also is from the Aoun family, but it's not really. They're two different families. Was the head of the patriotic, movement, a Christian Lebanese party. He was pro-resistance and had come into power through a brokered deal, basically with Hezbollah and Amal. And this new president was the head of the military, Joseph Aoun, and the Americans, pushed him to become the new president. And in the process to get him to become the president meant the violation of the Constitution of Lebanon. The Constitution of Lebanon says that no grade A civil servant can run for the position of president except if they've already retired and or resigned from their position 2 years prior to their election or running for the position. So they jammed uh, Joseph Aoun into the position in violation of the Constitution of Lebanon. And one thing that people are still hoping would indicate that he's going to be a good person, not a totally vassal of the US and the West, is that he's now the first president of Lebanon to come from the south of Lebanon. He's from the Marja area, just near the border, so south of the Litani River. We look at how, although throughout the war he did not fire one bullet on the Israelis, he now there's more pressure on him to do something because of, first off, being from the south of Lebanon and being the former head of the military. Now, as a president, he has the chance to prove his credentials and actually order the military to do something. So we'll see how this plays out. But ultimately, the country right now is in imbalance in power, where the United States controls both the president and the prime minister's position, and the resistance controls only the Speaker of the House in the parliament. Usually there was basically Syria had a veto over the president's name, so it made a balance between three parties kind of situation and power sharing. Now it's imbalanced completely. How will this play out in the coming days and months of in terms of the policies of the government? But ultimately, what we see is that Hezbollah is now returning to its roots of being a opposition resistance group, and maybe it will begin the exit from politics because of how limited now the possibilities are through the political doors.
All right, Leif. Well, thank you very much for those insights there. And I think that is a good point on which to leave this episode. So, to the Cat Follows viewers, thank you as always for making it to the end of the episode. To Leif, very much thank you, for being
You,
here
sir.
as always. And to the Cat Files audience, we appreciate this journalism. Please go ahead and support both the Cat Files and Free Palestine TV, monthly, annual, or one-time donation if you can. Or if not possible for you, spread the word. Either one is much appreciated. Goodbye, everyone, and we will see you next week.